The Dane and Derek Show is an uncensored, unfiltered podcast. Content warnings can be found in the episode description. Hello, and welcome to the Dane and Derek Show, a podcast where two nerdy friends keep in touch and shoot the shit. My name is Benig-Aiello. I'm a writer, director, and a pretty avid tabletop RPG player these days. With me, as always, is my good friend, Dane Fogdahl.
Hi, I'm Dane. I'm a writer, lover of tabletop RPGs. I play music sometimes, and I have a podcast.
This week on the show, we're going to be talking about dates and dating. So, Dane, what's your go-to date outfit? Just right off the bat.
Okay, so here's the thing. I don't have one because it super depends on the date. Depends on what restaurant we're going to, or some of the first dates I've been on. I've been hikes or to see really specific movies or whatnot, and so they honestly reflected whatever the date is. So my go-to date outfit is whatever I feel the best in that also works for whatever we're doing, right? If I'm going to a nice restaurant, whatever I feel best in for that occasion is definitely not what my hiking date outfit is. Yeah. I think my other thing is I always try to match the energy of whoever I'm with, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Because it really sucks if you show up in a nice imagine a nice hipster outfit, and if the other person shows up in a suit, but everyone's gonna feel awkward. You have to match the energy of the other person.
Right.
Unless it's one of those really weird wild dates where they're coming from one place and there's no time to change and you can't But what about you?
Yeah, no, I gotcha. I mean, we'll get into this later, but usually a first date for me is the movies. It's the most basic of basic things.
It's basic for a reason.
Yeah. But usually that'll mean it means I'm wearing a sweater usually. I'll try to pick my most my most comfortable clothing, which usually is some kind of a ragged sweater. I have no issues with wearing probably the worst looking clothing on a date, primarily because it's like a gauge, right? It's if me wearing this hoodie with a hole in it is what kills it, then I don't know if that's someone I want to be on a date with, you know?
Yes, I should qualify what I meant by comfortable. I meant comfortable in my that comfortable in your own skin sort of feeling.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes that is not comfortable physically, but it's a different comfortable than what you're saying. Exactly. But I get you.
Yeah. The alternative is to wear some sort of wild, zany, nerdy graphic tee, because that'll instantly gauge, if I don't know, if the person thinks you're too nerdy or something, and that's not necessarily someone I'd want to be around. So,
Yeah, no, I get you.
It's a thing. But yeah.
So our actual topic this week is the perfect date, right?
Yeah, the perfect date.
Nice.
Yeah. This was a question asked by Namnamsense, I think is the handle. I think I mispronounced that, and I apologize.
Okay, we should qualify a couple things with this, because I think our answers are going to be wildly different.
Mm-hmm.
You are single right now, yes?
Yep.
Right.
I'm single right now.
I am going on year 6 of my relationship. So what the perfect date is has changed a lot. So for me right now, a perfect date is no longer it's no longer a movie date or a nice dinner. It's usually almost an event, if that makes sense. Uh, like for Gracie and I's 4th anniversary, we went out to like a restaurant that we normally can't afford, and we stayed at a bed and breakfast for a couple days, and like took a lot of time. Like the perfect date for me now is distinct, long, dedicated time. I think that has to do with the fact that there is an acknowledgement for me that, because it's not really a search for like more exciting experiences, if that makes sense. Like I at least do not like we don't need every experience to be a new experience. Um because I personally in relationships don't find a lot of value in just like the spark and flame of things, if that makes sense. Like, like the honeymoon period's wonderful. But if you ask me, the stuff that comes after, like the long term, like emotional growth and support, um, and like deep passion is like twice as good. So for me, it's this thing of like what makes a perfect date is actually getting to experience life um with my partner in a way that detracts, like that sub, or not detracts, but subtracts all of the stuff that normally kind of like filters in. um because as you go into life with your partner, things get intertwined even more and more and more, right? Like, you know most days I check in with Gracie about how her mom is doing, because they have a pretty, you know, they have a lot of communication, and I'm like, well, how's that going? Um, or for example, Gracie and I have dogs, um, and so like the question of when this next time they go to the vet often comes up, and so the longer like the like separation, and like it's such a treat to like finally, after like, because you can't have this all the time, um have time where there's just nothing but the relationship for a while. Like it's like getting down to like the core, if that makes sense,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
just for a little while. Because like I'll use this metaphor. A mixed drink is really, really nice, like I love a good um Kentucky Mule, or I'll go for a dark and stormy sometimes. Like these drinks are tasty. Um but so long as like the core, the really good rum or the really good whiskey is in there, sometimes it's really nice to just have that. If you catch what I'm saying, like
Gotcha.
just the like it's just like whatever gets like the purity of it for just a little while, like if every meal we're having is eating out, well then, we don't have to worry about the dishes,
Right.
and if we're not at home, nobody has to feed the dogs. Nobody's asking each other to do chores or these other things. So yeah, it's that. And like, if you want, I've rambled a lot already, but like if you want, I can talk about like first dates and other things, but that's where I'm at these days. But what about you? Like I said, I've been rambling.
Yeah, no, I figured that we'll go into like first dates and other forms of dates and stuff after we both describe our like perfect date, but here is sort of my rule of thumb for the perfect date. The perfect date cannot be planned. The perfect date just kind of happens.
Mm.
It's something spontaneous, whether it's a first date or like a date 100. It's something that, you know, you and your partner, you and the person you're going on a date with, just sort of were like, hey, let's just show up here and see what happens, right? There was no, like, the perfect date has no expectations, it has no sort of direction. And as a result, it becomes whatever you make of it. And that is certainly, I think, what like that can be really great. Like, for instance, like, from my own life, like a perfect example of a perfect date was meeting my then partner at like a historical monument late at night and walking this like Freedom Trail in Boston and seeing all these historical sites on a whim in the middle of finals. And that was like a perfect date. Could not have been planned, could not have been expected, could not have, you know, because if like, you had said like, oh, let's go do this on this day at this time, it just, all logic, makes you want to say no. Like, there's no way that could work. And when you
Yeah, I
throw
see
out
what
all
I
that,
see. Yeah.
yeah, that's what makes a perfect date. It's sort of accidental in a way. And that's like, you get those once in a blue moon, right? Because like, I don't know, I can't think of the last time I went on a truly perfect date where like I didn't spill spaghetti sauce all over my shirt, or like, you know, I didn't make a bad joke that was not laughed at, or like, I picked a bad movie or something, right? Like I can't think of of like, like the ratio of bad to okay to good dates to perfect dates. It's like very, very, like, perfect dates are clearly an outlier. But yeah, I think that's sort of where, like, and I guess in a way, Dane, like we're both kind of pulling at the same string, right? It's sort of when sort of the rest of the world kind of melts away and you're able to be present in that moment, whether
Absolutely.
it's with your partner for an extended period of time, or whether it's doing something completely unplanned for a period of time. It's always when like when everything seems to melt away. That seems to be the common thread here.
I think I can agree with that for sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
But yeah, it's really hard to get a perfect to have a perfect date because, like I said, you can't plan for it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, yeah, because like when you like mention like these like unplanned moments, I'm thinking back to all of the ones that I've had, and they're always like superior dates to like almost every sort of like planned one I've ever had, except the like long extended stuff. But like the long extended stuff usually also has some like lower moments too. I don't know. It's interesting. It's really really interesting. So, here's a question. Because like when you were talking about like your perfect date outfit and like if there's a hole or like the graphic tee stuff, is there like a goal or like point to a first date in your head?
uh, man, I feel like a first date. It's like half the time you don't realize you're on a first date. You know what I mean?
One of the
Unless
good
somebody
ones,
explicitly
yeah.
says, this is a first date. You don't really realize you're on a first date. The I feel like, it's not necessarily a goal, but it is certainly like a like a see if you're comfortable around this person kind of vibe. It's like a vibe check. You know, it's like,
Yes.
like you just want to make sure that you're not going to be crawling out of your skin every time like you hang out with this person.
It's like obviously, of course, it's like, okay, is this like a person I'm interested in getting to know? Like all those basic things. But like, like I guess maybe a better question is, do you have like goals? Because it sounds like you have goals. Do you know what I mean? To like, you're like, I need to know these X number of things by the end of this first date. And some of that information I can gather from my clothes, like it's a fact
Oh
finding
yeah,
expedition almost.
a
Um,
little bit, yeah, but yeah, definitely a little bit. Like, but I think that might just apply more to my personality. Like, I have a selection of shirts that I wear to social gatherings whenever I know I'm going to be super awkward and I want to have a conversation starter. Like, I have a selection of shirts that I only wear to parties because I know someone's going to be like, "Oh, you're a Power Rangers fan," or "Oh, you like Star Wars," or "Oh, like
yeah.
you like this obscure video game." And it's like like I think for me it's like it's another point of conversation that I wouldn't have gotten out of just wearing like what I normally wear, which is like a plain t-shirt. I don't really wear graphic tees that often at all.
Not really,
Um,
no.
and so like for me it is like another way to sort of like jog the conversation in case like, I'm just like too nervous or something to talk,
Yeah. Yeah, I get that. Honestly, for me, and again, I'm going to qualify this with like, it's been a long fucking time since I've gone on a first date, like a really long time. So I know shit. I know jack shit about first dates in all reality. Um, but for me, like imagining this, like honestly, if I can't keep up a conversation naturally, probably a bad sign, especially on the first date when like everything's a mystery, right? Like you don't really know this person yet. Yeah, you got like I'd be really worried if like the conversation like stalled too hard, right? Like awkward pauses, fine. But like cuz like to me that's like okay, either I'm not willing to open up to this person enough to give them something to talk to me about, or they're not comfortable enough with me, or worst of all, one of us is literally boring the other person, which also
Yeah.
sucks, and none of that. And that's just a sign to me like, no, this is not the person. Like I'm like honestly, like the closest thing I have to like first dates lately were like a couple of like first time hangouts I got to have with some friends. And both of those went great. And a lot of that had to do with the fact that like just conversation never really let up. It was fantastic. So I don't know. Like, and I'm thinking about like, for me, I'm less concerned about trying to find something like with my clothes, like for example, like there is a goal involved. Like I want them to know I care, if that makes
Mm.
sense, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like for me, the goal with my clothing is to be like, hey, I care about this. So I want you to see that I put a little effort in.
Right.
I you don't know me that well, so maybe you'll find out later that it really was an extra effort, but I want to look that way, if that makes sense.
Right.
Yeah, it's weird. It's really weird, though.
Yeah. I mean, dating's weird as a whole.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I often cite this. There's that Motion City soundtrack song called "Stand Too Close." And there's a line in it that's like, "Once you get to know me, the magic's gone." And I very much feel that way when I'm like on a date. It's like the instant we like get into like what I'm interested in and what I do, it's like the other person usually realizes like, oh, this guy really loves film. He really loves making stuff. He really loves Dungeons and Dragons, almost too much. And it's like yeah. And once you kind of figure out those like three things, you realize, oh, that's like it. That's like all he does. And it's like, yeah, that's all I do, and I'm quite content with just doing this cycle of work and stuff. But it is funny. It's
I'm gonna stand you for a second.
okay.
I think you're selling yourself a bit short there. You can describe anybody that way. You can break anybody down like that.
Fair.
That's not fair. You're not getting into the fact that like you care about like philosophy, right? You talk about Ma a lot. That's a philosophy. It's an art philosophy, but it's a philosophy, and it leads you down these other sides, right? Like like you care about people's work. Like you will talk about like people's artwork a lot, and you care about these things, and like just because like those are your like go-to topics and what people could like pick out of you really easily, that doesn't mean that's the end of you. Like not even by a long shot. Like here's a fucking example. Think about all the goddamn topics we've done on this show.
True. Yeah. Yeah. All 33 at this point,
Mm-hmm.
and more if you count the episodes we have not released.
Yep.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah. No, I get that fear. I don't want to diminish how you're feeling.
Right.
I'm here to like be a different voice in your head.
I appreciate the hug.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, yeah. I don't know. I think, yeah. It's just so interesting, right? Like the concept of meeting someone, doing all these like things.
It's tryouts. It's tryouts for
Yeah.
a thing, right?
Yeah. It is. It's weird. It's
Because on the one hand, we do that in a lot of things,
mm-hmm.
but not usually so overtly, right?
Yeah.
Like Okay. Auditions, interviews, dates.
Yeah, they're all the same.
Like, yeah, like don't get me wrong, like we try out our friends. We really do. But again, it's not so overt, right? Like
Right.
you hang out a couple times and you're like, I'm just not gonna, like, you can ghost people who you were kind of considering being friends with, and all of these things because it's not so formalized somehow. Like honestly, dating sometimes feels like one of the few social things that we overtly are like trying out for, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And also, it's so brutal
Yep.
because it's about you, right?
Yeah.
Like, you fuck up a job interview, it's like, okay, well, maybe my resume sucked. Maybe someone had better qualifications. Like, there's these things, right? Where it's like,
Hmm.
okay, well, I'm still like a person that's likable and like it's fine. Or, an audition, like you can just fuck up an audition. You're like, I missed my line. Any number of these things, right? But with like dating, the thing you're putting forward is you, like just you, you know.
Yeah.
Um, and that's hard.
Yeah.
Like holy shit.
It's like being a vlogger, but in real life.
Yeah,
And unlike on YouTube, it's like you're the only one that gets to live with the knowledge that it didn't go well. Like, you
and
know?
and also like you can't like even a vlogger can perform, right? The
Right.
camera
Yeah.
goes off. The idea with dating is that probably, like, for most people, probably someday the idea is like, okay, we're gonna like live together until we die, right? Like if you like really think about it, like at like a really long term about what culturally like the expectation and what the tryouts for dating is, that's what it is. It's trying to see about something like that. And so no, it's never going to really really like click until like, everyone's like letting a lot of their guard down, and then it's really about you. And that's crazy.
And we're at this kind of like crossroads too, where like, the idea of a nuclear family and sort of that traditional methodology of dating that like we've been told since we were kids is starting to disappear. And we're entering into this new world where like dating to date someone for a period of time doesn't necessarily mean all those other steps that are normally associated with it. And
Yeah.
so like all of a sudden it's like that weird crux of like, are you dating because of this other idea or dating because of this other thing, or are you dating because you feel like you just should date? There's so many other weird factors that kind of play into like the whole like, why are you putting yourself out there, whether it's just talking to people or like putting yourself on an app, or like it's just such a it's like it's like going to the beach with a mirror without sunscreen, no, fully knowing you're going to get burned and roasted.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
But you do it anyway. You do it anyway because that's what everyone else is doing, and you feel like you should, and it's you want to feel like something. I don't know, like it's weird. Like it's interesting too because like like I don't know, like dating not in a high school or college setting is super interesting. Like that's something that I'm running into where it's like meeting people is very different and very strange, considering that like I'm not on apps. I'm not on any of those dating apps, and I will refuse to be on them as long as I possibly can. But that requires me to like meet people in real life, which for the last year hasn't been a thing. But
Yeah.
um, as of late, it's like kind of becoming a thing, but it's still weird. It's still
It's hard.
weird. Yeah, it's just so different. It's like unlike in college where it's like you're surrounded by people
Tons of
and you
people you
can
don't
kind of just
know.
exactly, and you can just kind of float between social groups until you kind of mesh with someone, right? Like go back to your whole tryout thing. It's like, yeah, you can just float between social groups until you find a social group you get along with, because that's it's like that's how real life is.
Yeah.
you know, you kind of just figure out the people you get along with, and you hold on to them for as long as you can. Um,
Yeah.
it's really bizarre human connection. But I mean, that's I guess why we make art. It's it's why we go on dates. It's why we make art. It's why we find people that we spend extended periods of our life with. It's why it's why we do a lot of things, right?
Yes. Yes. I yeah. I think a lot of everything kind of just boils down to human connection.
Yeah.
But it's tough from what I understand. If you're not going to do dating apps, you're in for some like difficulty for sure.
Oh yeah. Oh,
And
I'm
and honestly, I think the dating apps make it more like a job interview. Like you have to make a
yeah.
profile. You have to make a fucking resume. You have to make a resume. You have to make a dating resume, right? Like
Yeah.
you do, and that's weird. It's weird.
Yeah. Maybe
It's
that's a maybe that's a
yeah.
bonus episode we do where you help me make a dating profile.
Oh, we should do that. Yeah, write that down.
Yeah,
Write that down right now.
because eventually, right? Eventually, one of these days, I'm gonna do it, right? Like I'm gonna try it out just to be able to say, I did it, kids. I did it. The old Derek finally gave in to the digital era and tried the whole dating app thing. And when that happens, I know I'm gonna not take it seriously, or that I'm going to ask a lot of friends for their opinions on what I should be saying and doing because like I don't know, like like what do I put for a bio? We'll eat 3 burritos right in front of you. Like I don't know.
That's funny though. That's really funny. That okay. That might actually get people to stop and look at your profile. So don't throw that out straight away. But I think we're out
okay.
of time.
We are.
Unfortunately,
Well-
look forward to this bonus episode or entire
Yeah.
episode. I don't know.
We'll see what
Previews.
happens. We'll see what happens. If people, if people want this to happen, let us know on our social media. You can follow the show anywhere at Dane and Derek, like Dane and Derek, everywhere. Tweet at us, Instagram at us, the whole thing. But yeah, this was a good time, Dave. I'm glad that we talked about this. But yeah, you can see what movies that I'm watching on Letterboxd at Benig-Aiello, and I'm conveniently at Benig-Aiello everywhere else. And Dane, where can we find you and your work?
I have exciting news about this.
Yes!
You can now find me at danewrites.com, which is like Dane writes, like the verb. There are links to my podcast, my music, and my Twitter there, just in little buttons. And there is soon going to be a Substack. There's a link to a Substack, but it doesn't lead anywhere quite yet. So that could change that'll probably change literally by the end of the week. So, and I'll also be updating things, adding things as I go going forward. Yeah, come find me there, danewrites.com.
That's very exciting. I'm very happy. I'm going to go bookmark that page right after this. And all of you should as well. But yeah, thanks for hanging out with us, everyone.
Catch you later.